With all the new cameras and gear that's being shared with us from some great creators at NAB, particularly from Blackmagic. And if you're like me, you're amazed by all of the new gear that's coming out.
Magnificent! Magnificent!
You know, but one thing that stays at the forefront of my mind is how does this make me a better photographer, videographer, or cinematographer? Recently I've been, contemplating as far as like what's the next piece of gear that I can get that's going to elevate my visual storytelling. But before I begin to address that side of things, I need to ask myself this question, is that have I actually maximized the tool that I currently have? Or have I squeezed every creative juice that I can get out of it? And the answer is, not really.
What?
Now, I've been more in tune with photography over the past couple years, which has helped me, I guess, gain a different perspective when it comes to my videography as far as the framing and layering of my shots. And because I've been perusing, through photography over the past couple years, and I found myself looking for a medium format photography camera, but they are slightly expensive. Now, being an owner of the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, I recall that the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro does take stills or photos in this case, and I haven't really used that feature before on the Black Pocket 6K Pro. I've mainly used it for its cinematography or video purposes, and because of this I felt the need to experiment with it and to see what I can come up with. Now, the question I posed to myself is, can the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro take some great photos? And spoiler alert, yes it can, but it's a lot of work. Now, I was able to test this camera out by going to downtown Orlando to be able to capture some photos, and I want to say that they're okay. They're pretty good photos. Now, additionally, this cinema camera does remind me of another type of camera that is widely used, but we'll get to that later on in the video. Now, according to the spec sheet for the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, this camera does shoot 21 megapixel stills or photos, which appears to be more than enough to get the job done. So if you have a built-in autofocus lens paired with the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, then that definitely will add back time to your workflow as far as how you're able to just go out and be able to get shots. And the reason why I say that is that the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro does have a feature on the camera to where you can utilize autofocus, but it's not going to be like an advanced autofocus system like you would get out of other camera systems that are out there, such as a Canon, Sony, etc. In a particular situation to where I used the Blackmagic 6K Pro, it was paired with the IRIX 21 cinema lens, which required me to manually pull my focus with this camera. Now, I want to add is that I don't really recommend this particular type of setup that you see. It's because that this 21mm IRIX cinema lens paired with the Blackmagic 6K Pro is heavy, and it weighs in at roughly 6 pounds.
Damn! I'm sorry.
Now, I know some of you probably deal with, larger cameras, but if you're coming from like, a Canon R5 or a Canon R5C or even a Fujifilm XH2s, this camera is going to be, or this camera setup is going to be slightly heavy. Another reason why I don't really recommend that type of setup is because of the fact that the camera doesn't have IBIS, and that you may pick up some micro jitters to where the camera may not be all the way focused, or it may be kind of shaky to where some subjects within the images in itself seem to be kind of blurred. Nevertheless, I get it as far as why one would want to use a hefty lens like that with a cinema camera, you know, basically for the look, to see what type of look or style you can get out of a camera like that. And I think that's fine at the end of the day if that's what you're aiming for. Now, figuring out exposures can be easy with the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro because it does have an in-camera auto white balance feature within it. So it does make it convenient as far as being able to exposing your shots when you're trying to capture photos. I did find myself not using that particular feature though, because I was mainly just focusing on the T-stops and exposing it from that perspective. Also, I leaned heavily on the false color feature that helped me with my exposure. Now, this was refreshing to have this false color feature with this particular camera, because out of all the cameras I've owned, they've always had zebras, which, you know, helped you with your exposure of the image. But I don't know, I really didn't rely on it too much, because sometimes it didn't really help me like I wanted it to where false color, it truly gives me the layers that I need to really truly expose for an image and what layers I want to expose for. So that was definitely a breath of fresh air to where I was just really giddy about using that feature with this camera. Now, with all that being said, I will say this is that some of the photos did come out somewhat soft, and some did not have, you know, the sharpness I was looking for in some of the distances that I had the focus peaking set for. Now, that could have been me as far as, you know, not really paying close attention to that particular detail as far as like why some of the photos came out sharp in some areas and sharp in other areas. And I'm going to try to do some more tests to figure that out, to see if it's mainly, you know, myself, or maybe the focus peaking could be off. Now, remember when I said that the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro is reminiscent of another type of camera? Well, that camera is a film camera. And what I mean by that is that you can't look at your photos in camera. And that can be, you know, kind of nerve-wracking because you just don't know. Now, another way that you can view the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro stills or photos is if you have a laptop or iPad on hand. But even with that process, which I'll get to later, can be kind of cumbersome, to where you'll probably just want to wait until you actually get home to actually view those images and go through that steps. But I will say is that, you know, overall, it does force you to take your time and work at a slower pace, which is always good, because at that moment in time, you're able to really just kind of hone in on checking the boxes off to make sure that you have everything aligned that you want to have, that really meets the expectations of what you're trying to accomplish with the image that you're taking in that moment. Now, the last point, and I just touched on it a little bit, is the workflow of producing these images for the Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera. Now, the stills that you capture within this camera will be based upon what format that you're shooting in. So in the case of me shooting these photos, it was in BRAW. So the photos that came out were in a RAW format. Take it into Lightroom and color grade them. Now, before you even get to that point, when you're going through the process of getting these stills in camera, what you need to take in consideration is the time it's going to take to convert this camera stills into JPEGs. Now, another thing I will say is that whatever aspect ratio you took these photos in, that's the aspect ratio that is going to show on your photos, essentially. So if you shot at 16.9, you're going to get that particular type of aspect ratio in your photos in Lightroom. But if you shot in, let's say, a 1.85 aspect ratio, then that's the format that it will come out in within the JPEG file itself. So you'll have to crop it in either Lightroom, or you know, crop it in Davinci Resolve, then export it out into a JPEG, and then bring it to Lightroom, to where it's more so of a whole picture versus having the photo in an aspect ratio to where you have that blank space around the image in itself, to where you'll have to crop it out again within the Lightroom platform. So what have I learned? Oh man, it's a lot. Throughout this whole particular process is that I'm trying to squeeze as much creativity out of the gear that I currently have. And finding those workarounds to try something different that has you inspired to create new things and discover new things within the tool that you have currently in front of you. And don't get me wrong, you know, getting, you know, new camera, new gear, or anything is great. It feels good. It feeds into those dopamines that we have and gives us this high. However, if you don't have to, just stick with what you have and just create with that and see what new things can come about from that. But as always, continually appreciate the process. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Deuces. And another one. Yes, sir. Oh man, this is a long video. A long video.